Hello, I'm Krista McAllister. Whether you are growing your business or another area of your life, we welcome you. And today, speaking of life growth and experiences, I am joined today by Sandy Gennaro. And Sandy, before we get to the good stuff, and there is a lot of good stuff, I've just got to give a little bit of background on what you've done in your life, because you're not just a world-class speaker. You've now found that more recently. Your background, you're a drummer who's recorded and toured internationally with several platinum-selling superstars, including 3 members of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. 4. Thank you. I would not have that incorrectly. So we've got Cyndi Lauper, Joan Jett, and the Blackhearts. I'm going to spare everyone and not start singing her songs. The Monkees, both Diddley, Johnny Winter. You've been their drummer for all.
Yes, I have, either in the studio or live touring.
And are you okay if I quote that? It's 56 years of a career.
It's going on about 58 years. I started when I was 14, and I turned 72 in July of 23.
So at 14, because I always you've really been not just a drummer, but an entrepreneur your entire life, finding one gig to the next, and then now as really a world-class speaker traveling around. At 14, did you have in your mind then, I'm going to be a drummer?
It started, Kristen, when I was 2.5, and I got the toy drum for Christmas, and I love that thing. I love the fact that I can hit something with sticks and not get hollered at by my mother. And my dad played big band music around the house, and my older sisters played 50s rock and roll around the house. And I was always attracted to rhythm, always. But it wasn't until I was 2.5 when I got that drum, and I still have that drum upstairs in my office here in Nashville. But it wasn't until I was 13, February 9th, 1964, when I saw the Beatles. I never seen a drummer play until the Beatles appeared on Ed Sullivan, 1964, February 9th. And when I saw the Beatles and how much fun Ringo was having, and the freshness and the positivity of those songs, but especially the way the girls reacted to a rock and roll band playing on TV, I said, I don't know what's going on there, but I wanted to be part of that. So right there, that was my defining moment. I should say, getting the drum was part A. Seeing the Beatles and what a drummer can excite in a live environment, that was part B. And right then, I knew exactly what I was going to do, and there was no doubt. I actually lived as if I was a successful drummer. I lived as if I was a rock star, known drummer. The only thing missing was the reality. But in my mind, I was already that. I used to dress like the Stones and Led Zeppelin. I used to whatever. And then when I got my first drum set, almost a year after the Beatles appeared on Ed Sullivan, that's when it started. And that's when I actually applied the idea of being a famous drummer to the reality of it. I started playing gigs and whatever, started small little graduation parties and stuff like that. And I always believed as if, I always lived as if. It wasn't a goal that was out there. It was already inside me, and the reality, just the steps had to be taken in order to get there. But there was no doubt in my mind that I was going to go there.
I love it. And you, not just 2 parts to, I got a drum set when I was 2.5, and then I saw the show, but you said you had it in your head and you could visualize, this is what I'm going to be. This isn't, we work with business owners all the time. I knew how big this company could be. I knew the greatness I could make it into, but then you didn't sit at home saying, so when's it going to come? What's going to happen?
No, well, I was always there, and it was always inevitable. And I scotch taped a picture of a drummer from a drummer's standpoint, looking out at the audience. I scotch taped a picture on my bathroom mirror, and I said, every day I looked at it since the Ed Sullivan show. I said, that's going to be me. It was a drummer from behind, from a drummer standpoint, looking out at the audience. And I didn't know what the band was going to be. They were faceless. I was looking at their backs, but I was visualizing. And that's what I visualized every single night before I went to bed. I used to talk to that picture. Hey, Sandy, that's going to be you. It's only a matter of time. You don't know how you're going to get there. I don't know how I'm going to get there, but I'm going to just keep forging ahead, follow my muse, follow the inspirations I get as far as rehearsing and go play with whatever. And I had no doubt in my mind. I received it. I received the result in spirit first. I knew that it was, I internalized that and I visualized it. And the key, Kristen, to the concept of visualization, the key to it is if you realize the end result of that visualization and you attach emotion to it, you attach how you would feel if that really happened. Like speaking to what you just said, you don't visualize something. Everybody visualizes a this or a goal or a, or whatever, but then they can sit back and go, well, if the chips fall as they may, or if I get lucky, whatever. You can't. It's not a growth mindset. It's a fixed mindset. Well, you're depending on something other than yourself. Oh, well, if I get lucky. No, I don't believe in luck. I believe in you determine your own luck. It's like similar, the concept is similar to putting an address in a GPS. And then you press, let's go. You don't know how the GPS is going to send you there, but you know you're going to get there eventually. So that's it. I just programmed that in my GPS of life, and there it goes.
You were 100% where that journey was going to take you. And I love some of those twists and turns that you kind of trusted the GPS and said, okay, this is telling me I'm going to turn here.
Right.
So you're out playing the gigs, you're
Yep.
out, you're doing the hard work, you're out there. And there's some of those moments where they happen. You didn't just go flying past them. You stopped and said, whoa, wait a minute here. Would love to hear about some of those twists and turns and what led you to some of the biggest stages in the world.
Well, one of the, it's living my what I live via this this acronym that I use in my speaking presentation. It's called BEATS, BEATS, and it stands, in addition to playing beats on a drum set for over 58 years. I live these principles day in and day out, even as a child, and it stands for belief, enthusiasm, attitude, tenacity, and service. And I've always lived in under that umbrella of how can I help you? Just living with a spirit of altruism, like thinking outside yourself. And I was playing a gig in not in San Diego, in New Haven, Connecticut, early on, and there was a guy in the doorway. I was really in a big hurry. Everybody else was on a bus because we had a long overnight drive. And there was a guy, I was in a really serious hurry, and the guy was in the doorway with a camera and a pen. I could have blew right by him, or I could have acknowledged him briefly and said, I'm in a hurry, I got to go. But I engaged him. I said to myself as I'm rushing around, he's there to see the drummer in the band. I'm flattered. The headliner is already on the bus. The rest of the band is on the bus. I'm flattered. And I thought about when I used to walk around the mall with my mother at 15 years old. This is after the Beatles and all of that. She used to say, what? I know why you dress like those Led Zeppelin guys, but why do you carry a pen? And I said, Ma, in case anybody asks for my autograph. So that's a little antidote, as I was living as if, even though I was 15, walking around the mall without a gig, So, but anyway, I engaged the guy, and he said, my name is Dave. I signed an autograph for him. Okay, Dave, there you go. Took a picture. He pulled out an Instamatic camera with a flash cube. He aims the picture. And I said, Dave, you got your picture and your autograph. I got to run, man. He said, oh, can you help me get a gig in New York City, Sandy? I'm a bass player here in Connecticut. So I said, well, I can't recommend you unless I hear you play. So here's my card. Send me a cassette of your playing and I'll see what I can do. And he was very, very appreciative. You're giving me your home number? Are you sure you want to give me your home address and your home number? No big deal, Dave. Send me a cassette. I left, got home from the tour. The cassette was there. I listened to it. It wasn't really that good, to be honest with you. And but I kept my promise, recommended him to some people. A couple of years later, he calls me, "Hey, Sandy, thanks for recommending me. Nothing really came of it, but I found a singer in Queens. I signed her to a management deal. She's going to be the biggest thing in 1984." He said, "I want you to be the drummer in the band. Your personality, your drumming style would fit perfect." And I said, "Dave, I can't join a baby band and ride in a Winnebago again and share rooms." He said, "Sandy, you don't understand. You may have to do that at the very beginning of the tour, but it's going to be the biggest thing in 1984, and I don't want you to miss this opportunity. Come down to the studio and at least meet this woman." So I went down to the studio. Long story short, it was Cyndi Lauper. Based on the little bits of songs that she was working on, this was her first album. Nobody knew who Cyndi Lauper was. But as soon as I walked in the studio, one thought struck me, is that this woman, based on the way she looks, the way her voice sounded, she played me a couple of little snippets of songs that we're working on. And I said, man, she's not going to fly under the radar. She's going to command an opinion from everybody, whether they like her or dislike her. And I said, based on that, and based on some of the songs I heard, based on the fact that she wanted me to play side stick on Time After Time, all of those things, I ended up joining the band, and it put me on the map in the music business, because not only me but her band, and because she introduced her band every gig, every TV show, first and last name. And but I think back, and what if I would have blew Dave off? What if I was in a hurry or in a bad mood, or wanting to grab a bite to eat on the bus, and I was hungry, whatever? My life would have been changed. My life changed. And so many good things come from that 1 5-minute encounter. The dominoes kept falling. At one of Cindy's gigs, there was someone by the name of Joan Jett in the audience. 5 years after Cindy's tour in 1989, I was asked to do a Joan Jett tour. And I'm still reaping the benefits for that 5 minutes with Dave in the doorway, because November 23rd of that tour, November 23rd, 1984, I met the woman who I ended up marrying, and we're still together 38 years later. And we have a healthy 29-year-old daughter who is the road manager for Chrissy Hine and the Pretenders. They're going on the road next year with the Foo Fighters. So from that little 5-minute encounter, and I ask CEOs and I ask people that ask me to tell this story, I say, think about the Daves in the doorways that you blew off because you were hungry, bad mood, in a hurry to get home, whatever, didn't have the time. Think about the opportunities that could have crossed your path if you just engage people, if you just take the blinders off and walk through your life with a spirit of, how can I help you? How can I put a smile on this person's face? And wonderful things happen beyond your wildest dreams.
And I know that as you do speaking engagements, you work with CEOs, the concept of leadership teams comes out a lot. And I want to pull out a few things from your story here that I think are so telling about who you've become and who you developed to and how you are influencing others. And that was when you walked into the studio and you listened, you engaged the talent, you could tell great talent. And what you said, I'm going to support. She needs to go somewhere, even though you'd had more experience, you had more of a career at that point. You didn't just say, nope, I'm out. You said, wow, that's talent. I'm on her boat. I'm on her bus. Let's go.
Right.
And in turn, she knew the investment that everyone and the risk everyone took. And you said it shows. She would stop and introduce first and last name every single person.
Right.
In the band. When you look at leadership and people who are trusting you and believing in you, that's powerful.
It's very powerful, and it speaks to, with all of the Hall of Fame artists I've worked with in my life, they all have more than one thing in common, but one thing they all have in common is they recognize their people. They don't consider themselves any better as a person, as an artist. They look at their band as equals, basically. As Cindy, for an example, she had several champagne toast meetings in her suite after a gig. Hey, well, once a week, once every 10 days or something on the road. Hey, come up to the suite. We'll have some champagne. But she always used to say, and I'm not going to imitate Cindy Lauper's voice because it's
Yeah,
impossible. It's impossible.
original.
So, totally original. But she said, you know what? My meetings are like the army. And, and army men have a helmet, and on their helmet, they have their rank. Well, everybody takes their helmet off when they enter the meeting because nobody has rank in this room. You're all free to speak. You're all free to speak your mind without fear of retribution. They recognize, and that's the key. When your people feel that they are appreciated, it's the cycle of positivity. In other words, Cindy appreciates the band. Well, the band says, well, Cindy really appreciates us. Well, we want to work harder for her. And when we work harder, the band sounds better. If we're all engaged and focused, the band sounds great. And if the band sounds good, it gives her a great platform upon which to sing, a rhythmic platform. And if the band and vocals sound good, the audience loves it. And the audience buys the $50 t-shirt that costs $3 to make, and they tell their friends. And the next time Cyndi Lauper plays, San Diego, she'll play the arena instead of a club in San Diego. You know what I mean? So you don't do it for this reason. You don't reach out to people because of what you're going to get in return, but it always comes back to you inevitably when you reach out in a positive way. And so when you reach out and CEOs reach out and recognize their people, then it comes back to them because they're people. And CEOs that don't have that have a retention problem, employee retention. Well, sometimes maybe you got to look in the mirror and say, why are your employees in a revolving door? So you benefit by recognition. Recognition of your people is the cheapest, most powerful, most effective way to engage people in the workplace. And, an example I say in my presentation is that Cindy signed an 8x10 for my mother to Sadie, your son is great. And it had a lifelong effect on my mother. And it had a effect on me because Cindy was my CEO, and I'm going, well, this is how she feels about me. Well, I'm going to give it everything I have, every last thing I have. And I left it all on the stage every single night. And so did Cindy, and so did the rest of the band. So that's what happens. It creates a cycle of positivity.
And looking at that, as you guys were in sync, you played well together. In a band of that nature, you've got to be on point every millisecond of every song in unison with the crowds going, the noise going. I mean, I can't think of a better leadership team lesson of you guys. I can't even begin to imagine what that's like. How did you get to the point you can love each other and want to be the best, do the best for your CEO and Cindy and your band leader, but there still needs to be some practice, some diligence. And you mentioned band meetings. You and I haven't had this discussion, so I'm as curious as anyone listening here. How do you get not just rowing in the same direction, but every single beat you're together?
Well, first of all, that speaks to a drummer. Well, first of all, the drummer is the most important person on that stage. In terms of the drums are the most important instrument on that stage because it all emanates from the groove of the drums. Okay. The drummer is the heartbeat, the backbone of the band, and the band is only as good as it's the consistency of its drummer. Speaking of consistency, that's the number one rule of a successful drummer is being consistent. And how does a drummer, under the heading of work ethic, become consistent? They rehearse with a metronome. They rehearse with a drum machine. Drum machines is a machine. It's like a clock, and it's perfect in whatever tempo you want it to be. So your work ethic has to be in place in order to perform those thousands of notes within one song four different limbs playing on four different surfaces, and like you said, every note has to be on the grid, but you only align with that perfection when you rehearse and you internalize a metronomic time. And that's why I conveyed to my hundreds of students over the course of a 27-year teaching career, number one, the drummer needs to be, well, how do I do a solo? Don't worry about a solo. You're not there to be on stage to play a solo. That's why I compare in my presentation to CEOs, you, Mr. CEO, are the drummer in your company. You are the most important person in that company. And you know what? If you notice, a drummer is in the back. He's not leading, or she is not leading from the front. They're leading from the back in a spirit of support for their people. Your idea, a drummer's idea, is to bring that band. My idea with Cyndi Lauper was to bring Cindy's band in sync with me in order to perform a service to perform a platform, to create a platform for Cyndi upon which to sing. And that's the idea, the whole idea with a CEO. You have to bring your people, your executive team, and then you have to, again, it's the trickle down. Your executive team has to go to their individual departments or whatever, but it starts with you, Mr. CEO. You are the drummer, and it all goes with you. And you can't, if the culture is rotten or there's something toxic about your culture, well, then you have to fix it.
Which is a tough thing, because I'm sure, and I was going to ask you, years and years of training and developing drummers to be that heartbeat of the band, because you can, we've had this conversation and looking at the list of people you've played with, you can show up at any band and step in because you're driving the beat. They need to be able, even though they don't know you from a hole in the head. Can you step in and they follow your beat, no matter who the team is?
That's correct. But what's important, though, Kristen, is not only the talent and the technical ability, it's the ability to get along with other people. That's very, very important. I know a lot of drummers that are like clocks on drummers, and technique wise, they can play circles around me, but they got a personality or an ego, or it's all about them. Because the reality is, when a band is on the road, you're on stage for what, 90 minutes, 2 hours, but you got another 22 hours that you have to live with the band. You have to be on a bus with the band. And the headliner, in Cindy's case, she was on the bus with us that first tour, before it got exploded. But so you have to live with the people. So it goes, technical ability in what you do only goes so far. You got to be able to have relationships with people. You have to have an open mind, and you have to have a give and take attitude to get along with people. That's key. That is key.
And not everyone can do that. Which,
no.
having trained, developed, taught drummers all those years, if I recognize as an owner, I'm not the person to be the drummer. This is the consistency, the temperament, that ability. I really just love sitting there playing my guitar. Can you go find a drummer inside the company? How do you find that drummer to then get the cadence, the beat, and everyone going in the right direction without skipping anything? What would you look for? We've got consistency, we've got ability to get along. How do you recognize great drummers that can lead a band from the back of the stage?
Well, it's all everything you mentioned. It's if I was auditioning drummers, and I asked I have been asked by a couple of bands, hey, we're auditioning, so first is how their work ethic. Are they given songs to prepare for the audition? Okay, so let's see how well. And I've had this experience, not with drummers, but I was on one particular tour of Europe. I was Bo Diddley's musical director. So I had to find a guitar player in particular, train and whatever. So you look for the work ethic, giving stuff to learn for the audition. How well did they learn? How well did they do their homework? And then it's like, okay, let's play a blues jam in G sharp or whatever it is. Let's play a blues jam. So now you're throwing something at the prospective employee, guitar player, or the drummer, to see how they react in something they didn't prepare. How do they on the spot make a decision, and how do they accommodate that decision? Okay, so now that those boxes are checked. Okay, now again, my band has to get along with this guitar player or the drummer. They got to get so have take them out to dinner in a social environment, no instruments, no playing, and see how they interact. Okay, well at dinner you're sitting next to one person or just two people, one on each side of you. So now, okay, after dinner, let's go bowling. So now you're in a bowling alley where everybody's like mixing and matching, sitting next to each other between turns of bowling or whatever. So you see what the consensus, well, you see how they interact. You visual. And then afterwards, if there are existing people in the band, I have a meeting with them or a phone call with them, a conference call. What did you think of X? What did you think of that drummer? This is from my standpoint, hiring a guitar player. So yeah, so it has to do with work ethic. It has to do how they play on their feet, how can they pivot with something unexpected, and then of course, how do they get along with other people? And having a conversation about what the tour is about, and are you prepared to go on the road? What's your family life about? Is your wife or girlfriend or boyfriend or whoever your significant other is, are they okay with you leaving for 6 weeks at a time? Because that's an issue too. The
Imagine.
home life, the spouse, sometimes somebody would be all in, all the boxes are checked, but then they get a call that they're on the phone. Oh, who's that girl you saw? How come you weren't in your room? How about, they have an earache from home.
Mhm.
That's another extended little tentacle that you have to deal with, or check that box too. How is your home life? Is your wife or husband or boyfriend or girlfriend prepared for you to leave for 2 months? Oh yeah, it's fine, whatever. So it takes a lot of different ingredients, and you could tell it goes well above the talent on the drum set or on the guitar or whatever. Is a lot of other variables to check the possibility of having a long-term relationship with this person.
And all this seems, you've dwindled it down to how do you select the A players to be on your leadership team? How do you get them all rolling? There's volumes of books and libraries on this, and you've dwindled it down to 5-10 minutes from a multi-decade music career and all the experiences that you went through. So I appreciate how you are able to take a range of experiences and bring it down to such a simplistic, easy to understand. Oh, that's how you do it. That makes
Right.
a lot more sense.
Right.
You've gotten to all of these experiences, and we'll make our way back to where you're at today and what you're doing and how you got there. Because you talked about the GPS. I think that we are who we are because of the journey, not necessarily the destination.
Correct.
And the journeys that you've gone through, those Dave in the doorway moments, when you talk at functions, you meet business leaders, and you ask them, what was your Dave in the doorway moment? What are some of the responses you get once they understand what a Dave in the doorway moment is? So maybe let's clarify that or reiterate it.
Yeah, the Dave in the doorway moment is basically a seemingly insignificant encounter fueled by the spirit of service. How that leads to unexpected results. And sometimes the unexpected results is like a cascade. It's like a waterfall. Sometimes you're rewarded in like kind, like the whole rule of karma is like you're rewarded in a like way. But in my case, I believe that sometimes you're rewarded in multiple ways. It far encompasses the little moment of engagement with Dave in the doorway. That was 5 minutes, but I got one of the biggest gigs of my life. I met the person that I'm still with today, 38 years later, happily married. And so sometimes you bring a shovel full and you get a dump truck in return. So it's and some of the responses, to answer your question, some of the responses are similar to that, where, hey, somebody asked me to do a favor, to accompany them to this church meeting or something, or a meeting, and the person really didn't want to go, but as a favor, you go with the person, and you go reluctantly, but at this meeting, you meet this person, you lock eyes, this other person, you start dating, and they end up to be your wife. It's just because you did a favor and went to a meeting with somebody, or whatever. I bumped into an old friend of mine from high school in a supermarket, and, oh, what are you doing these days? Well, I'm unhappy with well, give me a call on Monday. And that ends up, that little Dave in the doorway moment in the supermarket ends up where the guy goes and calls him on Monday, and goes to work with that gentleman. The gentleman now ended up being a CEO or something. But similar stories like that, like seemingly insignificant, randomly running into somebody in a supermarket that you knew from high school or something. So in the bigger picture, Krista, you wonder, is there like a mechanism, a higher power at work in our lives that is guiding you? What made Dave go to that concert in New Haven, Connecticut that night? Did he know when he left his house he's going to find a drummer for an act that he hasn't even signed yet? What causes this Vistage member to go to the supermarket that at that time? And so what I tell myself is possibilities are endless. When I think back at the certain synchronicity and this that kind of thing, where you wonder if there's an entity behind a curtain, like the Wizard of Oz, like moving and then big picture, Kristen, sometimes I lay awake at night going, was my 58-year playing career, did I do that for 58 years to learn lessons in order for me to impart those lessons to other people in the last chapter of my life? I'm 72 now. I've been only speaking for 3 years or something, 2 or 3 years. So that's relatively a small little sliver than the 58 years I did prior. But now, was that the purpose of me spending all those years on a tour bus and in a studio and learn those lessons so I can impart those lessons to other people? I wonder.
Some of it, there's a natural path and a progression. I work with so many accomplished executives with amazing careers, and so many, they sell, they exit, they, after 30 or so years, they really don't need to work in a way that they used to. And they come back and say, you know what? I just want to give back. I am so blessed. And this happened. Their hard work. But I know there are some Dave in the doorway moments, because when they're giving back at this point of their career and not saying, I'm done, I'm just gonna go make it all about me. That throughout their careers and their lives, like they were giving back.
Correct. And you don't turn on or off that spirit of empathy. That's what I said about the BEATS acronym. I live those principles every day of my life. Whether you don't live those principles when you want something. You don't live those principles when you're working or on the road, and then when you're home, you become another person. So, like what you said, a CEO continues to give back even when he relinquishes the day-to-day to his executive team, and he kind of takes a back seat, but he's still living those principles that made him successful. You don't turn that off when you retire. It's that's the way you live.
And then fast forward a little bit here, because I want to, in speaking with individuals and their different career points, I would say sometimes they end up in their next career purposefully, sometimes it's accidentally.
Right.
Even if it's accidentally, once you're there, be purposeful about it.
Right.
You didn't wake up one morning and say, I'm going to be a speaker. I'm going to go back on the road, but not with my drum set. I'm going to go with my 50 plus years of experience, and this is what I'm going to do next. You were purposeful once you got there, and it presented itself. How did you go from one to the other?
All right, how did I go from one to the other? Well, I'll
Journey.
tell you. Sometimes you can have a visualization like me with the drum set and it manifests in real life. Sometimes, Kristen, you don't know what's going to be happening. Case in point, I was in my 60s. I was wondering if I had enough put away to maintain my current lifestyle with my wife and my house and all of that when I'm 90. You know, if I live to 90, whatever. And so I always wondered, do I have enough put away in IRA? And I kind of did my share of investing over the course of my year. But still, if I stop touring and at 72, who on MTV wants a 72-year-old drummer? But whatever.
Oh, wait a minute, Fanny. I've seen you in action on the drums. I would want to see. That was amazing. You still
Thank you
got it
very
and
much.
then some. But we don't.
Thank you very much. Speaking to the point where sometimes the God energy, which I call it, the power greater than myself at work in my life, the universe or whatever you want to call it, sometimes it works on your behalf. We rewarding a spirit of service. San Diego, 2016. San Diego Arena, 20,000 people. I'm playing. What I usually do is I scan the first couple of rows. Who's going to get my drumsticks today? Now, keep in mind, I had no idea what I was going to do when I was going to retire. I was wondering whatever, right? And I was a little concerned about it. Anyway, so I see a handicapped person in a wheelchair. I threw her a drumstick. I continued walking. I looked back and I noticed somebody else, person on one side of her, intercepted the drumstick. I could have kept going. No, I want her to have it. He gave it to her. I replaced his. And she was so happy. She was holding and smiling and whatever. She was awesome. The next day, the husband of the woman in the wheelchair Facebook messaged me, can I call you? You threw a drumstick to my wife. So again, I had another fork in the road, a decision. Should I give my phone number to a complete stranger? And I'm wondering, being that my sticks are chewed up and chipped and whatever, maybe I have to call my lawyer. But I didn't. Well, I took a leap of faith, gave him my phone number. He called me. He was over the top, thankful how I made his wife feel, et cetera, et cetera. He says, I'm coming to Nashville. Can I thank you in person? I'm coming to Nashville to speak. Did I want to go downtown Nashville to meet a complete stranger at a Starbucks downtown on a Saturday morning at 10 o'clock? No, but I did. I went. He asked me to tell, hey, Sandy, he's a rock and roll fan. He's a music fan. How did you get Cindy's gig? How did you get Joan's gig? How did you get Bo Diddley's gig? Mamas and Papas. Well, so I gave him. So anyway, fast forward, he invited me to his speaking engagement. He introduced me on the side of the stage. He can I tell the Dave in the doorway story? He asked me. I said, sure. He told it. It got a really good reaction. And he kind of molded it towards a lesson to CEOs, whatever. Mm-hmm. Long story short, he said, Sandy, with that story and with your experience speaking to music groups over the years in a music school, whatever, you have no problem speaking in front of people. But you have to convey that story because CEOs need to hear that. People in general need to hear that story about the Dave in the doorway moment, service, living with a spirit of service. So basically I started, and he told me he would help me any way he can. He helped me taught me about a PowerPoint. I started speaking to Rotary clubs, chambers of commerces. This gentleman is a guy by the name of Michael Pierce, Antarctic Mike.
Antarctic Mike.
Who is a established Vistage speaker. Every time he came to Nashville subsequently after that first time to speak for Vistage, he used to invite me and to sit in the back as a fly on the wall to learn about all of that. I met some Vistage chairs in Nashville, became friends with them. When it was time for me, they encouraged me to apply to Vistage. I did in San Diego. They vetted me. I had to do my pro bonos for those 2 Vistage chairs in Nashville, and I was onboarded to Vistage. And then I spoke for Vistage like 2021, 22. And then in fall of 22, Vistage asked me to do a keynote at Chair World, Vistage Chair World. This was last January of 23. And that's an hour-long keynote with a drum set. And based on that performance, it basically, the speaking career exploded. So as a result, my wife and I went to Malaysia to speak for Vistage, Kuala Lumpur, Singapore, and all of that. So it was just a wonderful experience. And over over the course of the 2 years that I've been speaking, I always I hand in an evaluation sheet in most cases at a vision. What did you like about the presentation? What did you think I could do to improve the presentation? So I take those comments and I kind of integrate them into my Vistage program, which is a 3-hour workshop, as you well know.
Mhm.
So over time, based on the comments I made, I'm kind of molding this raw lump of clay, and it's kind of come to fruition. And I'm not done yet. I still hand out those evaluation sheets, and so I want to make it. I'm totally grateful, and I'm humbled the fact that it's been a success. My speaking career has been a success, and but I always want to improve it. I always carry around a sense of how can I make it better. I never rest on my laurels, and that's a good lesson for people too. Never rest on your laurels. Always be in a spirit of being able to learn something, to do something better or differently or whatever.
So we talk a lot. I talk a lot with executives on career choices and going from one thing to that. And well, I've been in one industry my entire life. How am I going to switch? I use the Sandy Gennaro story now. Here's someone who spent his entire career in rock and roll and playing the drums, and it now is speaking to, working with, and inspiring businesses.
Right.
I mean, I think you find those Dave in the doorway. You find those stories, and that power of a story from learning moments can be carried into so many different areas. And as you speak to CEOs, I love that you asked them what's your Dave in the doorway moment? You asked me that. And it's that because that's a story that needs to be told and
Right.
shared and inspired. And
Right.
you're able to take that, the relevance of what lessons can I take from this career and roll them into a whole new chapter.
Right. What is your Dave in the doorway moment, Kristen?
Yeah, it's funny. As I thought back, I thought, which of the 20 or 30, because I think that I wake up every morning going, what opportunity is going to present itself to me today?
Right.
I just need to listen and take advantage of it. I think probably the most significant and what brought me here today and how we are speaking was being enrolled to volunteer to lead up a board in a committee of a networking association that I'm paying them to do work for them. I mean, it doesn't get any better than that. You're paying money into an association and you're doing work to help that association grow on top of it.
Right.
People got to know me, and I always believe that someone is being their true self in a volunteer situation.
Right.
And paid, how they're acting, what they're doing in that situation. And one thing led to another. I was recommended for a large nonprofit board here in Orange County. Again, not paid, but I was so excited to go make an impact. On that board was my future business partner.
There you go.
We got to know each other. We got to see each other's values. We got to see the alignment. And then one thing just leads to another. And here we are, who knows how many decades and going on 2 decades later.
Right.
With a business now where we get to pay it forward, we get to help others. And I think there's so many moments that's we all have those. Did we realize we had them? And how do we now inspire others to have those?
Right. And well, first of all, it was a spirit of service, volunteer work. How can I help others without any expectation of something in return? The God energy, the universe made it happen for you. And the thing you mentioned earlier, Kristen, that's a very important aspect of your outlook or whatever, is what you said. When you get up in the morning, you say, what kind of opportunities am I going to have today? What is that? That's a sense of enthusiasm about a blank slate. The day has yet to be manifested. It's a blank slate. It's yet to happen. Yet you had a very, very positive, enthusiastic attitude. You didn't get up in the morning like a lot of people do. Oh, woe is me. What's going to happen today? Oh, whatever. And look at it like negatively. You get what you expect, and life is a self-fulfilling prophecy, and that's the E in beats is enthusiasm. You got to look at life with an enthusiastic attitude. It's very important, and attitude happens to be the A. And also another A that could be applied here is appreciation. You know, you look at your life, you look like you get up in the morning, you thank the person, you thank the universe for the person laying next to you. If you live with a sense of appreciation, it's impossible to be depressed at the same time, because appreciation is light and depression is darkness.
And
So,
that appreciation aligns with that recognition and recognizing those around you. It's another form of showing appreciation. And
correct.
it's tough. Things happen. Right? As leaders, some of the great leaders I know, I think, gosh, you must have this amazing, fantastic, the way you influence others, you inspire others, and then they will open up. You're not going to believe the trials and tribulations that goes on, but then they've got a support system and they're able to still show up every day and inspire others. And they say, this is then why I do it. This is what makes it all worth it. And I appreciate, Sandy, that you're now going around and inspiring others and maybe helping business leaders get out of our heads in that day to day in that operating sense to say, stop first, who are you serving today?
Right.
Yourself, others, your company, who are we serving? And then what's your Dave in the doorway moment?
Right. And you know what? A lot of CEOs, if they're sitting successfully in what they do in their business, because in a Vistage environment, you know, I mean, these CEOs had to be doing something right to be sitting in that meeting. But the key is now, okay, so you used your belief and enthusiasm, attitude, and a spirit of service and tenacity to get to your goal or whatever. But how do you pass that on to your executive team? And if you're a key group in a Vistage, if you're executive, if you're a vice president or the COO or the, you know, whatever, it's the CFO or whatever you are, how do you permeate that spirit of service and acknowledgement and appreciation? How do you instill that into your people? How do you instill that into your kids? Which is another can of worms that, you know what I mean? It's the
Save
whole
that for the
family.
next. That'll be the next one, Sandy.
Okay, okay.
Save that for a future one.
But still, you think about if you're successful in your own right. I mean, you know,
Mhm.
how would you instill into your children, Kristen, or how would I instill into my children, my child, how to have a spirit of service or what it could, you know? So you think about that too as well.
I love it. I don't think that we could wrap this up on a better note other than, and it's like people are attracted to like people. And I always say, my father raised me, and growing up, the one piece of advice he'd say is, if you're in service to your fellow man, that's all you need to be happy in life,
That's right. That's
no
true.
matter what. And it's that, love language, all the different things. So it's service. So even if that isn't necessarily the first thing that comes to mind every morning, your messaging of, as a leader, think about how are we serving others?
Right. And that's the key. What you send out, you get back. You send out service, the universe creates a service for you. You know, it's just, but you don't do it for that reason. That's the key.
And teaching others how to do that, because I do think that some of that, where it comes back and where it spills over, is if we're figuring out how to serve each other inside of our company, that means we're also figuring out how to serve our clients.
That's correct.
We're serving everyone. And when we're focused, customer-based organizations, when we're focused on others,
Right.
that's magic.
Right. And that's the byproduct of what I was speaking about before, is that when, you know, the drummer is the leader, the drummer is the CEO is the drummer. And when, you know, you bring people in sync with you, the songs get better. When you bring your people at work, your executive team in sync with you, what happens as a result? You recognize your executive team, and you teach them to recognize they're in charge, whoever they're in charge with. Well, then your product or service gets better because they all feel appreciated. And just like my product with Cindy got better in every act, I because I know that I was appreciated. And your clients are happier. Your service, product or service, whatever your company produces, gets better. And in turn, your clients are happier, your vendors are happier, your customers are happier. And what happens? Your business grows, and then everybody's happy. So you don't do it for the money, you do it for the service, and you do it for, and that's how recognition makes the world go around. That's as simple as that.
Bella, and you wake up every morning and get to do this. Sandy, thank you so much for joining us today on Serious Growth. Go find your growth moments. Pay attention to those Dave in the doorways.
Absolutely.
Never stop growing, whether it's your business, your person, your knowledge. Thank you for joining us on Serious Growth.
You're very welcome. Thank you so much for the opportunity, Kristen. I appreciate you.